For nearly 400 years, Roman rule shaped daily life in Britain. Roads connected distant regions, towns served as centers of trade and administration, and law replaced tribal custom. Order, however imperfect, became normal. Generations were born, lived, and died under Roman authority, knowing no other system of power. Then, almost without warning, that system vanished. There was no dramatic final battle, no farewell ceremony, no clear ending. Rome simply turned away, and Britain was left to face the consequences. The Roman Empire did not abandon Britain because it was defeated there. It left because the empire itself was under immense pressure. Across Europe, Roman borders were collapsing under constant attacks. Internal rebellions weakened central authority. The cost of defending distant provinces grew heavier each year. Rome was forced to make strategic decisions, and Britain, far from the empire's heart, became expendable. Troops were recalled to protect more critical regions. Administrators were withdrawn. Payments stopped. Britain was informed, quietly but decisively, that it must now defend itself. At first, the change may have felt subtle. Roman buildings still stood, roads still cut across the landscape, towns still existed. But Roman power was not just stone and architecture. It was constant supervision, maintenance, and coordination. When Roman officials left, the systems that depended on them began to weaken almost immediately. Without Roman soldiers, Britain's defenses collapsed quickly. Forts were abandoned, frontier lines disappeared, coastal regions became exposed to raids. Without Roman administrators, tax collection failed. Without tax revenue, public services stopped. Markets declined, trade networks fractured. What had taken centuries to build unraveled within a few decades. The most damaging loss was centralized authority. Roman Britain had been held together by a single governing structure that enforced law, managed resources, and coordinated defense. When that structure vanished, nothing existed to replace it. Britain had never developed a strong island-wide identity under Roman rule. Loyalty had shifted from tribes to Rome, not to Britain itself. When Rome disappeared, power did not transfer smoothly. It shattered. Local leaders attempted to fill the vacuum. Former tribal elites, military commanders, and landowners competed for control. Old rivalries resurfaced. Small power centers emerged and clashed with one another. Without a unifying authority, Britain fractured into competing regions once again. Law became inconsistent. Justice depended on strength rather than structure. Stability faded. Roman law, which had provided predictability, gradually disappeared. Disputes were once again settled through force, revenge, or local custom. Roads fell into disrepair as maintenance ceased. Bridges collapsed. Communication between regions weakened. Travel became dangerous. Britain did not physically shrink, but psychologically it withdrew. People stopped thinking in terms of provinces or shared systems, and returned to thinking only about local survival. Urban life suffered most. Roman towns depended heavily on imperial support. When trade declined and administration vanished, many towns emptied. People moved back into rural settlements, closer to food and protection. Stone buildings were abandoned or repurposed. Literacy declined as Roman education systems disappeared. Written records became rare. Later generations would refer to this period as dark, not because nothing happened, but because so little was recorded. This collapse exposed a painful truth. Roman rule had provided order, but Britain had never fully learned how to sustain that order independently. The knowledge existed, but the unity did not. Britain had experienced centralized power without developing the habits needed to preserve it. As internal stability weakened, external threats returned. Without Roman fleets or coastal defenses, Britain once again became vulnerable to the sea. From across the North Sea came new groups seeking land, opportunity, and security. These were not invading armies in the Roman sense. They were migrating peoples looking to settle. The Angles, Saxons, and Jutes arrived by boat, landing along coasts and rivers. They pushed inland, occupying territory that was poorly defended. Britain, divided and leaderless, could not mount a coordinated response. Some groups resisted fiercely, others negotiated. Many were absorbed. Over time, these newcomers reshaped Britain's language, culture, and identity. This period was defined by instability. Small kingdoms formed and collapsed. Alliances shifted constantly. Loyalty remained local. There was no central authority capable of uniting the island. Britain became a patchwork of competing powers, each focused on immediate survival rather than long-term vision. The sea, once managed by Roman systems, returned as a source of fear. Coastal communities lived under constant threat of raids. Danger could arrive without warning and disappear just as quickly. This reinforced a sense of insecurity that would shape Britain's mindset for centuries. Yet within this chaos, Britain was learning. The collapse of Roman rule demonstrated the cost of dependence on external power. It revealed that systems without shared identity are fragile. It showed that order cannot survive without unity, maintenance, and ownership. These lessons were not learned overnight. They would take generations to shape Britain's thinking. But the memory of Roman order never disappeared. Ruined roads, abandoned towns, and broken walls stood as reminders of what centralized power could achieve. Britain had seen what it meant to be part of a vast, organized empire. It had also witnessed how quickly that order could vanish when support was withdrawn. This experience would deeply influence Britain's future approach to power. Where Rome ruled directly, Britain would later learn to rule indirectly. Where Rome depended on imperial presence, Britain would depend on institutions. The post-Roman collapse was not the end of Britain's story. It was a painful transition, a necessary stage in learning. Britain was stripped of protection, forced to confront its divisions, and exposed to constant threat. It was weakened, but it was also being shaped. From this instability, new identities would emerge, new kingdoms would form, new threats would arrive. Slowly, Britain would begin another transformation, one driven not by comfort but by survival. The island had lost order, but it had gained memory, and over time, memory would turn into strategy.